Hello and welcome to a special video. In this video I want to give a big thanks to modder Ace9921 who recently modded a system of mine. A link to his channel will be in the video description below. So he recently modded my Sega Genesis Model 1, and this video I'm going to be showcasing it. So here it is, the awesome beast of a system that is the Model 1 Sega Genesis. Released in Japan in 1988 and subsequently a year later in North America, the Sega Genesis was the first system to kick off the 16-bit wars as far as consoles were concerned. This system was much more successful than Sega's initial attempt with the Sega Master System. This thing had so many great games that many people fondly remember the Sega Genesis as one of the greatest systems of all time. So with all that, why would you want to mess with a winning formula? Well, there's things that you can improve upon in the original Sega Genesis, and this system is decked out with improvements. So the original Sega Genesis Model 1 has a lot of things going on for it that are very unique. For one thing, it has a headphone jack on the bottom that allows you to plug in a pair of headphones and then control the volume like this, so you don't need to disturb someone who is in the room reading or asleep or talking or whatever. You can really just enjoy that game or your game that way. Unfortunately, this was the only way to get stereo sound out of the Sega Genesis Model 1. Originally, the system came with a multi-video out cable that was only mono because it was the same cable design as for the Sega Genesis or for the Sega Master System. So yeah, that's one problem. Another thing is the video output. The video output it could do either composite or RF. And the composite video is not very good, especially compared to Nintendo products of the same age. For whatever reason, the video encoder used in the Sega Genesis does not result in that great of a video signal. You get a really fuzzy, grainy picture. And it's not really improved on further models. So as the Genesis was replaced, Model 1 was replaced with the Sega Genesis Model 2, which is the boxy one that most people are familiar with, or the Sega Genesis Model 3, the video composite video encoder was not actually improved, and that was a big problem. So yeah, or you could do RF, which would be even worse. So this system has a lot of things going on for it. So I'm going to flip it over and show you some of the mods in the back. All right. So first you have the power plug, which is not modified at all. This is where you plug in the power cord. Typical of what you would expect. Next to that is the multi-video out, which now will do RGB. So if I had a SCART cable, I could plug in the SCART cable to that, and then I would get the European red, green, blue standard, which is great. All right. So next to that is right here where the RF cable was is now an S-video jack. That's great because S-Video is superior to composite, and that's just a fantastic signal quality that you can get out of the Sega Genesis Model 1. Next to that is actually a standalone RCA jack for composite, which is the yellow jack. This means that I don't need to use the proprietary cable if I want to use it with a composite video. Now, I have multiple TVs, so sometimes I might want to use this with a TV that doesn't have S-Video. Sometimes I want to use it with a TV that or if I have a TV that uses S-Video, I don't need to use this, and I don't need to bother finding the very short cable that is the multi-video out cable. So that's great. That's really nice. Next to that is where this extension port was, this 9-pin extension port. This was removed in subsequent models of the Sega Genesis, and that is because it was never actually used for anything. So rather than have Ace, remove it, I just decided, just leave it in because there's no real point, because otherwise there'd be a gaping hole right there. All right, next to that is, oh, look at that, a white and a red plug. That means that I can get stereo sound right out of the Sega Genesis without having to use the headphone jack or the multi-video out, which will only do mono. So yeah, I can get stereo sound right out of that, and the headphone jack still works. So that's pretty fantastic right there. And next to that, you can see all these. You have a red, a blue, and you have a green jack. And that is actually component video. Oh yeah, component video on a Sega Genesis. Now, that's not actually possible on a stock system. The system has been modified with a new video encoder to allow that. So that's pretty awesome. This will do up to 240p, which might not sound like very much, especially compared to, 720 or 1080p. But keep in mind, the system came out in 1988. For it to get P at all, progressive scan at all, that's pretty amazing and astounding. So yeah, that's modded in, but it does look really good, and but there are some drawbacks with that, but I'll get into that in a minute. Next to that is a region switch, a 3-state region switch. So this will go either this will go to North America, this will go to Japan, and here is PAL, and that's the European or Oceanic regions, which used the PAL format, which is different than NTSC. Alright, and finally, right here is an overclock switch. It will either go to the stock around 7 megahertz, or click it over here and it will be 10 megahertz. And most Genesis games will actually benefit from the 10 megahertz speed up, because the system doesn't actually overclock the games where they'll run faster. What happens is the overclock will make the games run smoother and remove slowdown. So in cases where, like Sonic the Hedgehog, when you collect 50 rings or whatever, and then you suddenly get hit by an enemy, the game will slow down because the system will render all those 50 rings as sprites and the regular sprites on screen. So there'll be way more sprites than the system can handle, and the system will slow down. Now, if you flick it up to 10 megahertz, this doesn't happen. All the rings go flying, but the game remains at the steady frame rate. So, all that said, let's show you the system in action. Alright, so I'm going to put it in, and now I'm going to plug it in. Alright, so the first thing I got to do is plug in the power. So there's power cord. And that simply gets plugged into the back. Then I'm going to plug in the S-Video, which goes where the RF was, because nobody uses RF anymore. Let's plug in the 2 stereo sound channels, the left channel and the right channel, and the final yellow jack. That can be plugged in, but I'm not even going to bother because I don't need it. Alright, so all that said, let's plug in a game. And the first game we're going to use is Sonic the Hedgehog 1. So I'm going to put that in. Next I'm going to plug in the controller, of course. There we go. Let's turn the TV on. And turn it on. Oh, whoops! Made a problem, because, like I said, I was showing you we're showing you guys the region switch. I had the system flicked to PAL, so now I'm going to flick it back to North America. And here we go. Sega! So here's Sonic the Hedgehog running in S-Video on an HD TV. As you can tell, it looks just beautiful. This is just a beautiful game, with very colorful, very rich, very vibrant. And now, thanks to the new video encoder, the S-Video is so vastly superior to the composite, it's mind-boggling. Alright, so I'm going to just demo a few seconds of gameplay. So I'm going to have Sonic stay still, and I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit. So you can see this blue area around the TV is actually the overscan area of where the screen, if I was using a CRT, this wouldn't display because the game does not expect there to be anything drawn into that area. So there's Sonic 1 in S-Video. So next, I'm going to switch only to composite. So now I'm going to unplug the S-Video, and it should switch automatically. So as you can see, this is what it will look like in composite. And again, just let's switch this to the S-Video. Notice that immediate jump in quality. So let's move on and show you a different game. Next, I'm going to put in Kid Chameleon. Oh, and one more thing. Let's move this back to my Genesis. The power light on the Genesis, it regularly will glow a red color when the Genesis is turned on. So I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to flick the overclock switch into position. And now when it turns on, it's green to represent that it's now running in 10 megahertz mode. Alright, so let's play some overclocked Sega Genesis Model 1 Kid Chameleon. This kid is the raddest kid at the arcade. So just like in Sonic the Hedgehog, this is another early Sega Genesis game that uses, that doesn't render anything in the overscan area, and you have just the blue area there. Now you might be wondering, well, what's the point of this, right? Because, you know, there are collections of Genesis games, especially like the Sega Genesis, the Ultimate Genesis Collection, or the Ultimate Mega Drive Collection, which includes, you know, many of the classic Genesis games, including Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Kid Chameleon. And that they're run for the modern systems, like the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and they render in 720p. So why would you want this? Well, for one thing, it's just way cooler that it works on the original hardware, and I don't have to bother, you know, hooking up my newer systems if I just want to play some Genesis. There's that, and for the fact that the Genesis has, you know, mini games that are not included on those collections, and, you know, there's just something to be said about playing the original hardware, even if that hardware is modified. You know, because it's just the cool factor. Alright, so this is what it looks like in S-Video and component, or and composite. But you must be wondering, what does this look like in component video? Because, component is really where it's at when it comes to video quality. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually turn off the Genesis because the component video cables I have are very short because they need to be male on both ends in order to go into these jacks and go into the TV at the same time. So just give me a moment as I change the cables around. I'm going to plug in the two audio jacks first because they're right inconvenient. Okay, plug blue into blue, green into green, and red into red. There we go. And the result is what you see right here. A mess of cables coming out of the Sega Genesis, and this will allow it to be component. Alright, so now I have to actually change the video input on the TV to component. And this should work now. Whoops, no power. That's a problem. Power cable. Power cable, there we go. And now we have component video Sega Genesis. Next, plug in the controller. There we go. Now, one problem that you might notice is these white or these black bars that go, or these gray bars that go through black areas of the screen. You can see it very, very clearly here. This is in component, and this will only happen in component. This is actually a problem that is caused by the Genesis hardware itself. The vertical bars in component are generated by the very noisy sub-carrier frequencies in the Genesis hardware video amplifiers, and there's really nothing you can do about this. Well, there is a solution, but the solution would be would mean you would get no color in either composite or S-video, and considering I use this on multiple different TVs, that's a problem. So, although there's a problem with those black levels, anytime that their screen is bright with actual colors, it does look just fantastic. It looks better than it looks in S-video, and this is really 240p. So it won't look, as good as like the video output on like the Wii with its component cable, but because that's 480p. But even considering the limitations of the system, it does look great, and it's HD video on a system that came out in 1988. That's what you got to keep in mind here. Alright, so I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit to show off just how clear and vivid this is. Alright, well, there's die. Alright, so moving on. Next thing I'm going to showcase is the region switch. So I'm going to take a European game. So here's Zero Wing for the Mega Drive, came out in Europe. I'm going to put that into the Genesis, and now I'm going to flick the region switch to PAL, and now let's put it a PAL game in PAL. So here's Zero Wing. So yeah, if you've seen my Uncommon Game Showcase video on Zero Wing, you already know about this game. It's, you know, pretty fantastic. So, yeah. Lastly, I'm going to pull that out and show you one more game, and that is Valis for the Japanese Sega Mega Drive. Now, Japanese Mega Drive games are uniquely shaped compared to North American or European cartridges. As opposed to the North American cartridge, which has a sort of really smooth sides and is actually a little bit curved, Japanese Mega Drive games have these sharp edges that come out of the sides, and they're sort of like these bumps, and the game cartridges themselves is a sort of rounded shape compared to the much more curved shape of the North American cartridges. This means that a Japanese Mega Drive game will not actually physically fit inside of the Sega Genesis. But yet again, Ace 9921 addressed this issue by adding in, let's see if I can get this, adding in extra flaps here. He cut the cartridge bay to allow it to be to accommodate the Japanese Mega Drive games, and with all that done, what happens now, move the camera down, what happens now is Mega Drive games simply fit right perfectly into the Sega Genesis, and all Mega Drive games will fit, from the ones that are even more unusual shapes like the Taito games. Now this allows Genesis games to fit perfectly, and Mega Drive games to fit perfectly too, making this system completely region-free with all Genesis games and all Mega Drive games made ever, everywhere in the world. So, and since it's a Japanese game, I'm going to flick the region switch to Japan and boot this up. So here we go. Here is Valis, Mugen Senshi Valis, or Valis the Phantasm Soldier, running on the Sega Genesis. Valis tells the story of a schoolgirl named Yoko who discovers the Sword of Valis and is destined to, like, rid the world of evil or something. You know, it's one of those weird games, you know, you play as a Japanese schoolgirl with a sword and kill monsters. That's, what more do you need to know? Although the game is very different, you do play as a Japanese schoolgirl with blue hair, wearing the blue Sailor Fuku, in a 2D side-scrolling game where you can slide. So, although it's made by Telenet and, you know, not Capcom, the game really does remind me of Mega Man in some ways. I wonder if that's why I like it. Valis was also released for the PC Engine in Japan, and that game was actually made for this PC Engine CD, and that is actually a remake of this original Genesis version. It also appeared on the Famicom and a number of other systems. Yeah, the Genesis version tends to just be, I don't know, the best version, I'd say. The PC Engine CD version looks better and has CD quality music, but I don't think the music is quite as good as what's found in this original Genesis version. And once again, this is running in 240p through component video and not S-video or composite, you know. So yeah, this is just a video that I wanted to make showcasing my modded system here. This was done by modder Ace9921, who is just a really great guy to talk to, and I really do appreciate his work here. If you want to check out his channel, it's in the video description below. And yet again, this is a really awesome thing. So if you like classic gaming, consider sending your system to Ace, because he just really does a great job. Not every system can be modded, but you know, a good majority of the classics can be. So with all that said, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.